Today, I want to talk about keys and the circle of fifths. So this will be an introduction to these concepts, which are huge concepts in the background of like every music we hear. But before we jump into the circle, let's back up and talk about keys. Now, we've had scales, major and minor scales, and we discovered that when we transpose those scales, when we take the pattern of half steps and whole steps, and we uproot it from where it originally was and place it down on another set of notes, then we are forced to change some of the notes in order to reflect the pattern of half steps and whole steps. We've seen this when we went from C major to G major. We had to add one sharp in order to make G major actually sound major. Same when we went from C major to F major. We had to make one flat in order to make F major have the same half steps and whole step pattern that will allow it to sound major. Now, as I mentioned, we can do this on any key. If we start, for example, on B flat and go to the next B flat, and if we apply the half steps and whole steps pattern for major, we'll find out that we need one more flat for B flat major. We need B flat and E flat. So the key signature just takes those two flats out of the scale and puts them at the beginning of the piece to say, well, if your whole piece is going to be in B flat anyways, why bother writing B flat and E flat every time? We know these are the two notes we need flat every time in order to have a major sound in this piece. So we'll just put those at the beginning, call it the key signature, and then everything else will abide by that unless it's changed by another sharp or flat. Here's just another illustration of why it's so helpful to have key signatures and necessary, actually. So Bach's Prelude 3 from the Well-Tempered Clavier is in the C sharp major. So you can write that without a key signature. Now notice that in C sharp major, every single note gets sharp. So that's a huge hassle, right? Think about it. If you have C major and you have all the white notes, right? Then you have C sharp major. Well, each note is going to have to go up a half step. So this becomes... So every note gets sharp. C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B sharp, and C sharp. Okay? You will have E sharp and B sharp occurring in C sharp major. I told you, why would we need E sharp when we can just write F? Well, F doesn't make any sense in the key of C sharp major because all of the notes are up one step. So raised by sharp. If you had F natural instead of E sharp, then you would also need F sharp. So you would need two Fs, which isn't going to work. As I said before, if you want C sharp major, you just lay out all the notes of C and then sharp each one. So 7 sharps, C sharp major. And then you'll play this piece mostly on the black notes, and you'll also have E sharp and B sharp in there as well. But as you can see on the bottom, if we just take all 7 sharps, take them off each individual note, it's way too much to write down, it's way too much to read, and we just put them right there in the key signature, then we're good and we can write every note just normally, just to make it so much easier to read and allows the musician to take a deep breath. They don't have to have so many sharps cluttering up the score. So more on the key signature. Here's just an example of how to create a key signature, right? We've got here an F major scale going from F to F. Well, to get the pattern of whole steps and half steps, as I said, we need B flat, and you can see that there. How would we write this scale with a key signature? Well, we're just going to take B flat, the one flat we need, and we're going to put that at the beginning by the clef, put it there on the B line, make sure it's on the B line, B flat. Then we can just write the notes plainly, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, but B flat is made by the key signature now. So every time we have B, it'll be B flat. When we write down the sharps and flats in the key signature, we collect them up from the scale, as I said, and put them at the beginning, but they always go in this order. When we collect them up, they might come in variety of order. You know, we come in the scale, it's being organized like this. We take those sharps or those flats, whatever sharps and flats they are, and we have to put them in the right order in the key signature. This order does matter. First F sharp, then C sharp, then G sharp, then D sharp, then A sharp, then E sharp, then B sharp. B sharp is last. Then if I go through the flats, first B flat, then E flat, then A flat, then D flat, then G flat, then C flat, then F flat. F flat is last. So notice B sharp is last because, again, that one is just basically C. There's only one key you need that in, and it's the one we just looked at. C sharp major has B sharp. It has all 7 sharps. C sharp major has E sharp and B sharp. Not many other keys have E sharp and B sharp. They're way there at the end. They're only used for that one key. But F sharp, the one at the beginning, is in all the keys except the flat keys in C major. I'll show you how that works when we get to the circle of fifths, because we are getting there. You might already have noticed the pattern here though, right? Is that the sharp order and the flat order are inversions of each other. They're opposite. So whereas the flats start with B, E, A, D, the sharps end with D, A, E, B. And if you read going this way on the sharps, you get the order of flats, and vice versa. So yeah, this just shows that the order of sharps is the opposite of the order of flats. They are the same ordering, just backwards. Now we know two ways of writing scales, and sometimes we'll be asked to write scales using the pattern of whole steps and half steps and using accidentals, which is what we'll call the sharps and flats when they're placed on each individual note. Those will be accidentals. And the definition of accidentals is those are chromatic alterations to a pitch made by adding the sharps or flats. So the difference between this and the key signature is that the key signature here is empty. There is no key signature here, so technically this is referring us to C major or A minor. That would be the default assumption. If I'm a musician and I look at this, I'm guessing here that we're in C major or A minor because there's no key signature. However, when I look at the scale that's written there, it's clear to me that this is E major because there's 4 sharps and it goes from E to E. So the scale is independent of the key signature in this case, meaning it needs accidentals. But if I make the E major key signature, if I take the 4 sharps and I put them in the order F sharp, then C sharp, then G sharp, then D sharp, and I put them in that specific order, then I've made an E major key signature, and then I can just write the notes plainly, and it all comes together because I am in E major. No more accidentals are needed. Again, accidentals are chromatic alterations that take you out of the key. So we're in a key. When we were in C major, we needed accidentals to take us to E major. But when we're in E major, we don't need those accidentals. Those notes are already sharp because of the key signature. So yeah, we've noticed that when we use the pattern of half steps and whole steps to generate the scale, that we got 4 sharps. So then our key signature also needs 4 sharps, but now placed in the correct order. So you can see that's not the order they come in. F sharp, then C sharp, then G sharp, then D sharp. So there is that extra step of ordering them. So these are the 2 ways of writing scales. And you can see there that I've put them in the correct order of sharps, just using these first 4 of the order of sharps, F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, and D sharp. Okay, let's build a couple other keys. Here we've done this kind of thing before. We've generated an A major scale from A to A. Then we notice that we have here C sharp, F sharp, and G sharp. Okay, 3 sharps that we got from using the pattern of half steps and whole steps. If we place this in the order of sharps, first F sharp, which got cut off, my bad, F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp, we place that in the correct order, then we get the key signature for A major, F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp. A major, 3 sharps, there's your key signature. Let's do another one. So here's a scale from F to F, and placed here the pattern of half steps and whole steps for minor, whole half, whole half, whole. And that has caused me to arrive at this scale, which has F, G, A flat, B flat, C, D flat, and E flat, and before getting to F again. But the problem here, you notice, is that there's no key signature and there's no accidentals. So I need either to have accidentals or a key signature here. Otherwise, this is incorrect. If I use accidentals, then obviously I'll just put A flat, B flat, D flat, and E flat where they need to be. But what if I'm asked to write the key signature for F minor? Well, this is how I would go about doing it. If the question was, please draw the key signature for F minor, well, then I know I can just go build the F minor scale, see how many flats are there. In this case, there's 4 flats. Then I would place those in the order of flats. I'm sorry, I got cut off, but you know is B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, then G flat, then C flat, then F flat. So those last 3, but here we're worried about those first 4 because we have 4 flats. So we need the first 4 flats. And if we take those and we put them in the correct order, then we get F minor key signature, which you see there. Now going in the order B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat. The ordering really does matter with the key signature. That way we can standardize it, and F minor will always look the same. It'll always look like F minor. It's not like that people have written flats all over randomly. It's like, no, we always know that we're talking about F minor when we see those 4 flats like that. F minor or it's relative major, because remember, there's 1 major key and 1 minor key that share each collection of notes. In this case, this is the collection of notes that has 7 notes and 4 flats. That is the collection shared by F minor, and it's relative major A flat major. Now, if you don't remember how to get, if you don't remember how the relative and parallel relationships work, don't worry, I'm about to review those as well. First, tonic, as I've said before, or do, is scale degree 1, and we name the keys also, just like with the scales, we name the keys after their respective do. So that top one that we saw was F minor, and then the bottom that we saw with 4 sharps, that was E major. E major or C sharp minor. F minor or A flat major. Okay, so let's do a little bit of reviewing of relative major and minor pairs, because I think this is really important for keys, right? When we talked about relative major and minor pairs, we did talk about this because it had to do with the scales. So the C major scale is actually the same collection of notes, just the white notes, that if I start on scale degree 6, 1, 7, 6, I get A minor, A natural minor. So there's our relative major minor pair. Going from C major, I start on scale degree 6. Now, what if I wanted to go backwards? What if I have a minor and I want to get the relative major? Well, just do it in the opposite. So start on A minor, and scale degree 3 is C major. So there are your relative major and minor pairs. Just remember that if you're going from major to minor, then you need to go down 3 half steps from your root note. But if you're going from relative minor to relative major, then you need to go up 3 half steps from the root note. In other words, to the third of the scale, to the start on scale degree 3. So you're either starting on scale degree 6 of major to get to minor, or scale degree 3 of minor to get to major. And as I said before, these are relatives because they share the same key signature. They are actual relatives because they have the same DNA, the same essential key signature. In the case of C major and A minor, that is no sharps and no flats. Let's look at a couple other relative major and minor pairs. We're asked, what key is this? Okay, well, we have to think, okay, what is the key with 1 sharp? How am I going to figure this out? Well, part of it is a gradual process of memorization. Part of it is the circle of fifths, which we'll look at in a second. And part of it, you can do this by just saying, well, what is the scale that I know that has 1 sharp? We've seen this before. We've seen this scale before. The scale with 1 sharp is G major. Now we have to remember when we're asked for what key is this is not enough information. It could be one of 2 things. It could be the major key or it's relative minor. So it's either G major or go down 3 half steps from G major. 1, 7, 6. So what key is this? E, F sharp, G. So there's still only 1 sharp. I've made a minor scale by having 1 sharp there, still F sharp, which is the same as G major. That would be E minor. Both G major and E minor are the scales with 1 sharp. Let's look at this one. C major or, well, we did just look at this one. C major or A minor. Here, this one's a little trickier. Now we've seen this one before. This one is C minor. In fact, because scale degree 3, 6, and 7 have gone down by a half step, making 3 flats, and the 3 flats have been placed in the order B flat, E flat, A flat, which is the order of flats. So that is our correct key signature for C minor. Now, what's the relative major of C minor? Well, here's C minor. You can see that the 3 flats I'm using is E flat, A flat, B flat. So those are my 3 flats. So what's the relative major? Well, we remember that to get to the relative major, you have to count up 3 half steps or just start on scale degree 3. So what's scale degree 3? 1, 2, 3. Starting on E flat. So the scales with 3 flats are both C minor and E flat major. The answer to this question, if there's no more information, no music or anything, it's just what key signature is this, is always going to have 2 answers. It's going to be either the major key or the minor key that share that DNA, that share that collection of notes, the relatives. Now, just to review our other relationship, we had parallel. Parallel major and minor pairs were more like C minor and C major. And when we had those, that was a parallel relationship because, like I said before, they have the same tonic, C, but now they have different key signatures because, of course, 3, 6, and 7 scale degrees, 3, 6, and 7 have to go down by a half step, going from C major to C minor. So this is a very different kind of relationship. It also has some really cool effects and things you can do musically with it. Again, these are going to be the closest kinds of relationships among keys, relative keys and parallel keys. Some of the closest relationships that keys can have. So we can see that here in this chart, where on the left we have the parallels, C major and C minor. You can see their key signatures are different, but they do have the same tonic. And then on the right, you can see the relative pair, in this case G major and E minor, which are different tonics, but have the same key signature. And this is the one that is related by G major, scale degree 6 is E minor, scale degree 3 will get you back to G major. So that's how you can move between the relative pairs and understanding the parallel relationships as well. Minor will always have 3 more flats than major. So even if there's sharps on the major, for the parallel minor might neutralize some or all of those sharps and then go into the flat world. Speaking of sharp world and flat world, I've mentioned this before. Some scales we have encountered are sharps and we don't see flats. We see all sharps, right? And then in some scales we've seen 1, 2, 3, 4 flat. So there's either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sharps or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 flats in each relative major and minor pair. So maybe we can make some kind of chart that shows all of these keys together and how they all relate to each other. Maybe it would end up being some kind of big circle. Let's take a look. One more question though. So we've seen keys with no sharps and flats and then getting further into the sharps, right? Like 1 sharp, then 2 sharps, then 3 sharps, then 4 sharps. So maybe we can maybe we can have this chart have a way of going first from no sharp, then going to 1 sharp, then going to 2 sharps, then going to 3 sharps, then going to 4 sharps. And maybe on the other side, we can have that goes from no sharps and flats to 1 flat, and then down to 2 flats, and then down to 3 flats. But how are we going to do that? How are we going to make the chart so that we can go in the order? This is 0 sharps, this is 1 sharp, this is 2 sharps, this is 3 sharps, etc. like that, just so we can get a sense of how they all look. Well, then we have to ask ourselves, how do we get from 0 to 1? In other words, how do we get from C major to G major? C major having no sharps and G major having 1 sharp. Well, think about it. What is the distance between C and G? We've learned our intervals now. So C to G is some kind of fifth, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What kind of fifth? Well, it's a perfect fifth. Let me just throw something out there. If I have a scale on one note, like C, and then I start on a perfect fifth up, then I'll have a scale with 1 sharp, like G. Now what if I start a fifth up from G on D? Now I have a scale that has 2 sharps. What if I start a fifth up from there? A. 1, 2, 3. Now I have a scale that starts on 3 sharp. I think we've discovered the pattern. All we need to do in order to get from C major to G major plus 1 sharp is up a perfect fifth. So we've got to go up a perfect fifth, go up to scale degree 5 for the scale with plus 1 sharp. So that would be from tonic to dominant. Now you might have guessed it already because the opposite would also be true. So if we go down a perfect fifth to scale degree 4, that will be the scale with minus 1 sharp, 1 flat. That would be down a perfect fifth. So once again, up a perfect fifth from tonic to the dominant will get you the scale with plus 1 sharp. Down a perfect fifth from tonic to what we call the subdominant, the underdominant, down a perfect fifth, F in this case will get you the scale with minus 1 sharp or at plus 1 flat. So if we start on C in the middle and if we tick this way with the sharps and then this way with the flats, right, like going sharp, 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 sharp and flat, 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 maybe we will end up with something that looks like this. So welcome to the circle of fifths. You could see right there at the top, 12 o'clock noon, there is C major with no sharps and flats. Then when I start going up a fifth and I rotate clockwise on the circle, each time I go up a fifth, I add 1 sharp. And you can see the keys here from C major to G major to D major to A major to E major. And that's why this is called the circle of fifths, because as I go along the circle from C to G to D to A to E to B, here's B, to F sharp, to C sharp, to G sharp, to D sharp, here's D sharp, to A sharp, and so on, and I can keep going, right? Eventually I will end up, here's A sharp, here's E sharp, here's B sharp, here's F double sharp. So if I keep going, F double sharp, C double sharp, G double sharp, E double sharp, it's actually not so much a circle of fifths as it is a spiral of fifths. If you think about it that way, we could spiral infinitely into the sharp world and end up with, if we just keep rising fifths, because B goes up to F sharp, then C sharp, then G sharp, then D sharp, then A sharp, then E sharp, then B sharp, then F double sharp, because B sharp is not a perfect fifth. You won't return to G. It's not, B sharp is not C unless we make some kind of cut and correction. And that is what we do here. So after we go from A to E to B to F sharp to C sharp, then we'll cut it off there. And we'll say, if we want to write G sharp major, what's the point of that? Having eight sharps? That's so silly. So we cut it off there. We say, no key with 8 sharps. We're just going to go into the flat world on the other side and then fill in all the gaps, make all 12 there, so that the spiral into the sharp world is cut off and then meets up with the flat world. Let me show you. So if I start at C again and I start decreasing in fifths, if I go down a fifth every time, first I'll end up on F, then B flat, then E flat, then A flat. You can see how this takes me into the world of flat. And same principle applies. If I keep going, C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat. Now, if I'm coming down from G flat, I go to C flat. See that? Down a perfect fifth. If I'm following the rule, I go down a perfect fifth. Then down from C flat, well, C flat to E. No, I'm going C flat to F flat. In order for it to actually be a perfect fifth, think about what we talked about with intervals, perfect fifth. F flat. And then if I keep going, now I'm at B double flat, right? F flat, B double flat. And that's just silly. We don't have any key that's called B double flat. So we'll take care of that by, again, cutting it right around C flat there. Just saying those bottom 3 overlap. I'll come back to that in a second. In the meantime, let's take a look at this. These orange arrows are showing the relationships among these keys. Again, it's just going 1 sharp, 2 sharp, 3 sharp, 1 flat, 2 flat, 3 flat. And what we call closely related keys are those keys that aren't parallel and they're not relative, but they are next to each other on the circle of fifths. So within 1 or 2 sharps or within 1 or 2 flats, these are called closely related keys. So the closely related keys to C major are G and F especially, and then to an extent D and B flat, but mostly just G and F. Then the same goes for like E major. The closest keys to E major are B and A. Those keys are going to be really closely related to E major, and I could do the same with any of these keys. Those closely related keys are good to know because they sound good together. They're almost the same collections of notes, just one note different. F sharp makes the difference between G and C major. Because it's just that one note, they're very closely related, and it's very common in a piece to go from a C major chord to a G major chord and then back to a C major chord. That's because these 2 keys are closely related. The outer circle, obviously, as we've seen, represents the major, and the inner circle represents the minor. And then maybe you noticed, but the pizza slices are the major minor pairs. So this is what really makes the circle of fifth a circle of keys. Because here in the top slice, we have C major, no sharps and flats, also A minor. So that key signature is shared among that slice. Same with the next one. So the next one is G major and E minor, like we learned. Then we have D major and B minor. Both of D major and B minor have 2 sharps. Then A major, and F sharp minor. F sharp minor has 3 sharps. So does A major. And you notice that if I start on F sharp and I go up 3 half steps, I get A. And same if I start on A and I go down 3 half steps, I get F sharp. And all of these are related in that same way, by 3 half steps, either up or down. Minor, it's 3 half steps up from the root. If you're on major, it's 3 half steps down from the root. Good. As for the parallel pairs, those are shown here. They're less emphasized by the circle. So the circle has a lot of patterns in it, and we're going to look at some of these cool patterns that can emerge. Parallel pairs are here, E minor and E major, but they're not clicked together on the circle, right? The circle is focused on the relative pairs. That's more important. The relative pairs make the circle of fifths what it is, which is a circle of keys. So that's the circle of fifths. That's basically all you need to know about it right now. You just have to get a sense of this in your head, that any of these 12 notes can have a major key on it and a minor key on it. So what this really is all 24 possible key signatures laid out in a systematic overarching format so we can really see. And as I said, it wraps around on itself at the bottom. So the key with 5 sharps, in other words B major, is the same sound on the piano and everything else as the key with 7 flats, which we would call C flat major. So you might be asking, okay, well, why would I ever write C flat major when I could just write B major? And that's a great question. In fact, that's why this is laid out like it is. These two are paired together here because it's either or. It really doesn't matter. It's going to sound the same. The result's going to sound the same. In fact, most composers are going to choose B major simply because it's easier to write. Only 5 sharps instead of 7 flats. The one on the left has the same relationship, right? 5 flats, the key is D flat, and 7 sharps, the key is C sharp major. So with the key with 5 flats, that's probably, you're going to see that a little more common than you see the key with 7 sharps, just because 7 sharps is like way too much to write, whereas 5 flats is a little easier to keep track of. And then the one in the middle is simply in the middle. So 6 flats and 6 sharps, F sharp and G flat. Of course, those notes are enharmonically equivalent. As I say, these two scales will sound exactly the same on the keyboard. Here's an F sharp major scale. And here's a G flat major scale. So, they are exactly the same. And all 3 of those on the bottom, when you see 2 keys there, those are all just saying that those are exactly the same. The key of 5 sharps is equal to the key of 7 flats. The key of 6 sharps is equal to the key of 6 flats. And you can just pick whichever one you'd like. It's much more common to compose with the simpler key signatures, like I said, because they're easier to read, but you'll see all of these around for sure. And those are our possible key signatures. Now, the most important thing to remember for the exercises of writing keys, building keys, and also of determining the notes in keys and so forth is really deeply connected to our scales. As we learned, we can build keys based on just finding the number of sharps or the number of flats based on the half step and whole step pattern when we build our scales. It's really just an extension of building the scales and then just taking those sharps and flats and putting them in the order of sharps and flats to make a key signature. And as you might have seen, you're just going to cut off wherever you don't need anymore. So say you have the sharp key with 3 sharp. Then you're just going to draw that F sharp, that C sharp, and that G sharp and stop there. And then those will sharp every F, every C, every G throughout the whole piece that you're writing. So once again, if you're asked to generate a key signature for, say, A flat major, then first you might go, okay, I am going to need to build an A flat major scale, drawing notes from A flat to A flat, using the pattern of whole steps to half steps, then figuring out how many flats I have total. With the pattern of whole steps and half steps in A flat major, I'm going to end up with 4 flats. Then I take those 4 flats and I put them in this order specifically: B flat, then E flat, then A flat, then D flat. Then I stop there. I just have those 4 flats and I'm done. I can do that, or I'm asked, what is the key with 4 flats? And I can either do that whole process and figure it out, or I can go look at the circle and say, okay, where's the key with 4 flats? There it is, A flat major or F minor. So there you go. I think the most important thing to remember is that we just have to memorize the order of sharps and flats. But fortunately, the circle and the power of the circle does a lot of memorization for us, in that it's just there for us to look at.